Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Thank you for our previous discussion, and to all of those that are with you. I'll ask my questions specifically to you, and you can defer them to others if it's more appropriate. But you mentioned, you've talked a fair bit in your testimony about alternatives to pain management, alternatives certainly to opioids. And you talked about some things like acupuncture and other types of care. But you didn't mention hyperbaric oxygen treatment, chamber treatment, and particularly for pain. We've found it to be quite effective, I think, in other types of treatments, particularly post-traumatic stress, brain injuries, things common to veterans and athletes and others. But just wonder why, and what do you think the potential is for that?
Well, it certainly wasn't for lack of appreciation of the treatment, and I pledge to you that I will be out in Fargo to look at the headquarters of one of America's largest hyperbaric chambers. No, we have to be more creative, particularly as treatments become more complex for more complex injuries, particularly the injuries of the brain. I think we're not even at the Sputnik stage when it comes to exploring the brain and how it responds to trauma, how it recovers. And Dr. Stone is probably the better expert when it comes to the actual medical conditions that treatment addresses.
Certainly, as a practitioner who spent much of my career doing wound management, hyperbaric oxygen is something we've worked with for a long time. But using hyperbaric oxygen to actually heal the brain or to do some of the work that you've been discussing is work that's been studied for at least a decade in both the DoD as well as in VA. What we know is that hyperbaric oxygen chambers have a dramatic effect in improvement of individuals with both PTSD as well as brain injuries. What we don't understand is what the addition of oxygen to the presence in that chamber does. And so there's been multiple studies done by all three uniformed services as well as by the VA demonstrating that, and we look forward to further research on it. Brain rest remains one of the mainstays at this time, and certainly going into a chamber where there is silence has great value. Whether the addition of oxygen under pressure remains in debate.
That would be interesting to see carried out, because my understanding is that the presence of more oxygen could have the alternative impact, because of course it's stimulant, I would guess.
Senator, I agree with you, and as a practitioner who's done wound management in the presence of trying to penetrate oxygen into wounds, that's exactly correct.
Well, we'd love to help you with that experimentation in Fargo, but we can talk further about that later. The other thing I wanted to mention, because you've mentioned it both in your testimony and in your answer to Senator Manchin, you talked about 13,000 more people. And you're in the people business. It requires practitioners to do the work that you do, and they do it very well. And by the way, they do it really well in Fargo, and we're very pleased and proud of the service they provide our veterans. But it's getting harder to find good people and to attract them, to keep them, and particularly in an economy like North Dakota has, as you're aware. It's even really elevated there. The challenge is amplified, I think, in an economy and in a region like ours, and probably like other rural states. That said, can you elaborate a little bit on specific programs, whether it's loan repayments, or what are some of the tools that you have available, or that we could help you with to attract and maintain and keep good people?
Well, I will say the chairman and the ranking member inserted into the Mission Act the first monumental step in addressing the needs of rural veterans by giving us the authority, extra authorities on relocation pay, reimbursement, the ability to pay off medical school loans up to $200,000. Those are absolutely needed. My goal, though, is to try to create even a more robust relationship with our universities and also with the armed services. General Bradley's goal was to have at least half of the doctors and nurses coming off of active duty, coming into VA. General Mattis and I spoke a great deal about that. We are now telling doctors that when they decide to leave active service, come to VA to continue your service to those who have worn the uniform. I want to go back to the future on that, but this committee's given us a start, particularly when it comes to rural America.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.